My name is Helen. I'm 65 years old, a widow. And for most of my life, I believed that keeping my family together meant giving more than I had. I never thought my generosity would become the very reason I was insulted in my own son's kitchen on Thanksgiving Day. The smell of roasted turkey and cinnamon pie filled the air, but the warmth of the holiday didn't reach me. I stood at the counter, spooning mashed potatoes into a porcelain dish, when my daughter-in-law's voice cut through the room like a blade. "You'll only stop embarrassing this family when you're dead." Her words hung there, heavy and cruel, while my son Mark froze at the table. The clatter of silverware stopped. Even the children, Lucas and Emma, looked up in confusion. My heart slammed against my chest. I had swallowed years of condescension from Vanessa, but this time I felt something break inside me. I set the dish down, steadied my breath, and turned to her. My voice was calm, almost too calm for the storm I felt. "Is that what you believe, Vanessa? Then tell me, without the $72,000 I've been sending you for the past 3 years, would this family have survived at all?" Mark's chair scraped against the floor, his face drained of color. "What are you talking about, Mom?" The silence in that room was deafening. Vanessa's smirk faltered, and for once, she had no quick answer. I could see the realization dawning in my son's eyes that I had been keeping them afloat, secretly, while being treated as a burden. It was a moment that cracked the foundation of everything I had accepted. I had spent years thinking money would buy me a seat at the table, that it would guarantee love and respect. Instead, it bought me silence and humiliation. Standing there, surrounded by the people I loved most, I realized the truth. I was done paying to be mistreated. Mark stared at me as if I had spoken a foreign language. His lips parted, but no sound came out. The turkey sat untouched in the middle of the table, steam rising into the heavy silence. Vanessa shifted in her chair, her face pale, then flushed red as though my words had set her on fire. "What money?" Mark finally whispered, his voice tight. I could feel my hands tremble, but I kept them folded neatly in front of me. "Every month, for 3 years, I've transferred $2,000 into Vanessa's account. I thought it was helping your family, helping you breathe. You didn't know?" His head shook slowly, disbelief written all over him. Vanessa cut in, her voice sharp, desperate. "We agreed not to tell him. Helen, he was working so hard, stressed enough as it was. I didn't want to burden him." "Burden him?" My words came sharper than I intended. "Keeping secrets isn't protection. Vanessa, it's deception." Mark's eyes darted between us, confusion collapsing into anger. "You've been hiding this from me for 3 years. Vanessa tried to grab his hand, but he pulled away. Her nails dug into the linen tablecloth instead. "I did it for us. Mark, for the kids. You never had to worry about bills because I handled them. Isn't that what a good wife does?" My stomach twisted at her performance. She made herself the martyr, as though my quiet sacrifice was hers all along. I caught the children's eyes, Lucas clutching his fork, Emma leaning into her brother, and guilt washed over me. They were too young to understand the words, but not the tension. I straightened my back and took a deep breath. That money ends today. No more transfers. No more secret lifelines. I can't keep buying my place in this family. Vanessa's chair screeched as she stood. "You can't just stop. Do you know what that will do to us?" Her panic was the final confirmation. It wasn't love or respect she feared losing. It was control. Mark rose too, his hands pressed into the table as if to steady himself. His voice shook, but his words were firm. Mom, we'll talk later. But Vanessa, if you've been lying about money all this time, I need to know everything, every dollar, every account. The air was brittle, ready to shatter. I pushed my chair back, forcing myself not to cry in front of them. I'll let you have your conversation, I said quietly. But understand this, I will not be treated as the villain for refusing to fund my own humiliation. As I walked out of that dining room, I felt both lighter and terrified. For the first time, the lies were on the table, and nothing would ever be the same. Mark didn't call me the next morning. I sat with my coffee, staring at the steam rising, wondering if he would ever ask the questions burning inside him. 2 days later, he showed up at my door, shoulders slumped, eyes ringed with exhaustion. In his hands was a bundle of papers. He laid them on my kitchen table, the same table where I had signed away so much of my savings. His fingers trembled as he spread them out. Bank statements, credit card bills, a second mortgage agreement. Mom, he said hoarsely, you were telling the truth. I didn't know about any of this. I leaned closer, scanning the pages. There were balances so high they made my stomach twist. A loan against his 401k, maxed out credit cards, and that second mortgage. He shook his head, eyes full of disbelief. She told me it was just refinancing, routine. I signed because I trusted her. I thought the vacations, the new car, all of it came from careful saving, but it was all lies. I touched his hand gently. You were tired, working yourself to the bone. Trusting your wife wasn't foolish. Being deceived doesn't make you weak. His throat worked as he swallowed, shame clouding his face. I should have seen it. I should have asked. You see it now, I said firmly, and that matters. Or Mark pressed his palms to the table, steadying himself. The anger in his voice was quiet, controlled. I have to confront her. I need to know if she'll admit what she's done. If not, he trailed off, but the meaning was clear. I watched him gather the papers, resolve tightening his jaw. My son had finally opened his eyes, but the price of clarity was devastating. As he walked out, I knew this was just the first crack in a marriage that had been built on secrets. The messages started almost immediately after Thanksgiving. Vanessa's name lit up my phone day and night, pleading one moment, raging the next. Please, Helen, just one more month. The kids need stability. Then, only hours later, you'll regret this. You're tearing our family apart. I stared at the glowing screen, my chest tight. For years I had answered every request, convinced I was helping. Now, with every vibration of that phone, I felt the chains I had carried begin to rattle loose. I didn't reply. Mark stopped by late one evening, his face drained. She's frantic, he said. I checked the accounts again. The car lease, the shopping trips, none of it made sense without your money. He rubbed his temples. I don't even recognize the life I've been living. I wanted to comfort him, but instead I reminded him gently, recognition is the first step forward. You can't change what you didn't see. Now you do. The following Saturday, Lucas had a baseball game. I almost didn't go. Vanessa usually made sure I was excluded from anything involving the kids. But Mark called, his voice firm. Come, Mom, the kids want you there. So I went. The autumn air was crisp, the field buzzing with parents in folding chairs. When Lucas spotted me near the bleachers, his face lit up. He ran across the grass, glove still in hand, and threw his arms around my waist. Grandma, did you see my catch? He asked breathlessly. Tears stung my eyes as I hugged him tight. For the first time in years, I felt like more than a wallet. I felt like family. Vanessa stood across the field, arms folded, her expression icy, but for once, her glare didn't pierce me. Lucas tugged me toward the team's pizza party, and I followed, my heart lighter than it had been in a long time. At the restaurant, I sat wedged between Lucas and Emma, paper cups of soda sweating on the table. The kids chattered about school, trading cheesy slices with their teammates. One of the other parents leaned over and said warmly, "Lucas talks about you all the time. He says you never miss his big plays." The words nearly undid me. I swallowed hard and forced a smile, realizing this was what I had been craving. Acknowledgement not for the money I spent, but for the love I gave. Later that night, after the kids were tucked into the back seat and Mark drove us home, I glanced at him in the dim glow of the dashboard. His jaw was tight, but his voice was softer than I'd heard in weeks. "They were so happy you came. It makes a difference." "Mom." I pressed my hand to my chest, feeling the steady beat beneath my palm. I knew the storm wasn't over. Vanessa wasn't finished. But that day, surrounded by children's laughter and the smell of pepperoni and cheese, I tasted freedom, and I wasn't going to give it back. Mark called me one evening, his voice low but steady. "Mom, I saw a lawyer today." I gripped the phone tighter. "And?" "She said if we can prove Vanessa built her lifestyle on your money, she won't get alimony. The second mortgage, the credit cards, the bank transfers. It all points to that." "Mom, I can't believe how deep this goes." His words echoed in my chest. Relief mingled with grief. My son was waking up, but the cost of that awakening was the wreckage of his marriage. That weekend, I stopped by his house to drop off some books for the kids. Vanessa was waiting. She stepped into the doorway, her smile brittle. "You think cutting me off makes you noble?" she hissed. "You've poisoned Mark against me. You've ruined everything." I steadied myself. "No, Vanessa, the lies ruined everything. I just stopped funding them." Her face twisted, and before I could move, she shoved a phone into my hand. The screen blazed with her latest message to Mark, words dripping with venom. "Maybe your father died because your mother smothered him, just like she's smothering you now." My stomach lurched. For years I had endured her subtle barbs, but this was cruelty stripped bare. Behind us, footsteps pounded. Mark appeared, his eyes blazing. "Enough!" He snatched the phone from me and turned to her. "This ends now. Vanessa, I'm filing for divorce, and I'll fight for the kids. No more lies, no more manipulation." Her voice cracked as she shouted, "You can't do this. You'll regret it. They need me." But Mark stood tall, his shoulders squared, as if he had finally stepped out of a fog. "They need honesty. They need safety. And you've given them neither." The room trembled with her fury, but for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I saw my son choosing truth over illusion, and I knew the tide had turned. As I left that night, the cold air hit my face like a baptism. Something irreversible had begun, and none of us could go back. 6 months passed, and the sharp edges of those nights began to soften. Mark moved into a modest townhouse across town, closer to the kids' school. He took on extra projects at work, and though money was tight, there was peace in his voice I hadn't heard in years. I saw the children more often. Lucas would call to ask if I could come to his baseball games, and Emma begged me to braid her hair before church. I no longer had to wait for Vanessa's reluctant permission. When I arrived, their smiles were open, unguarded, like sunshine after a storm. One Saturday, after a doubleheader, Lucas grabbed my hand. Grandma, the team's going out for pizza. Will you come? His eyes sparkled with hope. I said yes without hesitation, and soon I was surrounded by chatter, sticky fingers, and the smell of pepperoni and melted cheese. For the first time in so long, I felt included, not as a financier, but as family. The other parents welcomed me warmly. One mother leaned over and said, "Lucas lights up when he talks about you. He's lucky to have you around." I swallowed the lump in my throat, realizing how much I had missed these simple affirmations, the quiet validation of being present, away from the children. I began reclaiming pieces of myself I'd let slip away. I joined a neighborhood book club, where evenings were filled with laughter and debates over novels. I signed up to teach literacy classes at the community center. The gratitude in my students' eyes reminded me that purpose doesn't disappear with age. On quiet afternoons, I sat by my window with a set of watercolor paints, rediscovering the joy of color and brushstrokes. Each small choice was like stitching together a part of me I had forgotten. Of course, the shadow of Vanessa still loomed. She fought bitterly in court, dragging every proceeding longer than it needed to be. But the lawyer was right. When the records of my transfers came to light, her claims crumbled. No alimony, supervised visitation, and financial disclosures that left no room for her games. One evening, as I tucked Emma into bed at Mark's new place, she whispered, "Grandma, I like it better now." Daddy laughs again. Her little arms wrapped around my neck, and tears blurred my vision. That was all the confirmation I needed. The sacrifice, the confrontation, the pain. It had all led us here. I thought the worst was behind us. But Vanessa wasn't finished yet. I should have known Vanessa wouldn't fade quietly. The court orders didn't stop her anger from spilling into our lives. It started with late-night texts to Mark, long rants accusing him of betrayal. Then she turned to me, filling my phone with poison. "You stole my husband. You brainwashed my children. You'll die alone. Helen, just like your poor husband did." Reading those words made my stomach twist, but I refused to answer. I had already wasted too many years paying for silence. One afternoon, Mark called in a panic. "Mom!" She came to the house while I was at work, took half the dishes, the kids' video games, even Emma's backpack. The neighbors saw her yelling in the driveway. I drove over, my heart pounding. Mark stood in the doorway, holding Emma while Lucas clung to his side. Their little faces were pale with confusion. "She told us Daddy's making us poor," Lucas whispered, eyes wide. I knelt, cupping his cheek. "Sweetheart, you are not poor. You have love and safety, and that's worth more than anything." Mark's jaw tightened, his voice low with fury. "I'm done letting her twist their minds. I've already called my lawyer. We'll file for supervised exchanges only. She doesn't get to storm in here whenever she wants." He looked at me then, as if searching for strength, and I nodded. "You're protecting them now. That's what matters." That night, I sat at home and scrolled through the old messages again. Once, her insults would have carved me open. Now they seemed pitiful, desperate attempts to claw back control. I thought of the years I'd handed her power, not just with money, but with silence. Never again. The next weekend at Lucas's game, Vanessa showed up late, standing just beyond the fence. She didn't cheer. She didn't clap. She only watched, arms crossed, eyes narrowing when Lucas ran to me after his hit. For a moment, fear flickered inside me. What if she never stopped? But then I realized the truth. Her power was gone. The children weren't running to her. They were running to us. I drove home that evening, shaken but proud. Vanessa's fury no longer dictated my life. She could scream, lie, or lash out, but she couldn't undo the bond being rebuilt between Mark, the kids, and me. Still, I knew the war wasn't truly over until the judge's final ruling. And as that day drew closer, every nerve in my body braced for the verdict that would shape all of our lives. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and polished wood. I sat in the back row, my hands folded in my lap, while Mark stood with his attorney. Vanessa entered late, her heels clicking hard against the floor, her face a mask of defiance. The judge listened patiently, flipping through page after page of evidence, bank transfers, mortgage statements, screenshots of her messages. I watched Vanessa shift in her seat as the truth piled higher and higher until it towered over her. When the ruling came, it was clear and final. No alimony. Mark awarded primary custody, with Vanessa's visits limited and supervised. The judge's words were calm, but to me they rang like a bell of justice. Years of secrecy and humiliation had led to this moment of clarity. Mark exhaled, shoulders trembling as though he'd been holding his breath for years. He turned to me, his eyes wet. "It's over, Mom." I squeezed his hand. "No, sweetheart, it's just beginning." Life didn't magically become easy. Bills still came, routine still demanded effort, but the air in Mark's home was lighter. Lucas laughed louder. Emma danced through the kitchen, and their father finally looked like a man free from chains he hadn't known were binding him. As for me, I leaned deeper into the life I was rebuilding. Tuesday evenings with my book club, mornings teaching adults to read, afternoons painting with watercolors that bled into soft blues and greens. Each brushstroke reminded me I was more than the woman who wrote checks in the shadows. I was Helen, a mother, a grandmother, and finally, a woman who demanded respect without paying for it. One evening, after the ruling, I returned home and dusted the old picture of my late husband. I set it on the mantel, whispering softly, "You'd be proud of us." Mark finally found his strength. It felt like closing a circle, the weight of old grief finally giving way to peace. Months later, on a crisp autumn afternoon, I sat in the bleachers at Lucas's game. He hit the ball square and sprinted toward first base, his grin wide enough to light the whole field. Emma waved at me from the sidelines, her voice carrying, "Grandma, did you see?" I raised my hand, heart swelling, and whispered to myself, "This is what family looks like. Not money, not control, just love, laughter, and the courage to set boundaries." And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. That night, we all gathered around Mark's modest kitchen table. No crystal chandeliers, no designer dishes, just paper napkins and a pot of spaghetti. Lucas told a joke that made Emma giggle so hard milk spilled from her nose, and Mark laughed until tears rolled down his cheeks. I leaned back, letting the sound of their joy wash over me. It struck me then. Happiness had never lived in the grand gestures or the endless sacrifices. It was here, in the mess and the laughter, in the ordinary moments that money could never buy. As I cleared the plates, Mark touched my shoulder. "Mom," he said quietly, "thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled at him, my heart steady and sure. I never will. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy these family drama and revenge stories, please subscribe and join me for more every day.